Welcome and thank you for joining us today for our how preschoolers develop speech and language skills. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Kelly Barton. We are both on the preschool intervention and referral team. We work at PECEC, and I also service all of the classes over here at Vortex. I have been in district for about 18 years. I worked for 12 years as a special education teacher, and for the last 6 years I've been a preschool intervention specialist. And my partner, Nicole.
Yes, hi everyone, my name is Nicole Edwards, and I am a speech language pathologist. Before starting this job, I sat down with children and provided therapy to help them in an array of communication difficulties. I've been a PERT member since about 2004, where I had to kind of change my mind and rebuild it all over again, because now I'm on the side where I provide strategies. So being members of PERT, our job is to technically try to prevent children from needing certain things, so we give strategies to the classroom teacher and as well as to the parents.
This topic today, you'll clearly see from our little descriptions of ourselves that one of us is the expert in how preschoolers develop speech and language skills. So we'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you have as we go through our PowerPoint. So basically today, what we're going to be talking about is articulation development and the stages that children go through and develop their language skills, and those specific sounds they learn to make, and what ages are a good time, a typical time for them to be able to begin making those sounds. We'll talk just a little bit about disfluency and stuttering, just to answer any concerns you might have in that area, and then we're going to be talking about overall language skills. Okay, so pass it off to you.
Sure.
There you go.
So basically, when we think about speech and making speech sounds and producing certain sounds, we're not technically going through our brain saying, I have to open up my lips, I have to pull back my tongue, I have to let enough air out to make those sounds. It's like breathing. We don't think about breathing, we just do. So when we produce speech sounds, it's the same way. We're not thinking about it, it just happens, it rolls off our tongue. But when we look at preschoolers, little ones have been literally on this earth 36 months, 40 months. It's a lot for them to kind of, attend to what you're saying, being able to think of how to respond to you, and then also producing the sound correctly. So I want everyone to kind of take a look at all what we call our speech articulators. So they're parts of our body that help us make the sound correctly. And we can see why it's so challenging for our preschoolers, because these articulators, a lot is happening in millisecond time. When we talk, we're like firing off sentences, we're giving directions, we're asking a lot for what these preschoolers will have to do. So I wanted to go over the front sounds. There are sounds that are made in the front of our mouth. And those articulators would be our lips and our teeth. Those are going to be things that help us produce sounds correctly. In the middle of our mouth, we always have our tongue, our nasal cavity, so when we make those nasal sounds like ing, it's all happening here. Our hard palate that drops down a little bit, so we can form sounds what we call velar sounds, which happen in the back of our mouth, like k, g. They're all sounds that are occurring there, and our tongue is either retracting or is pushing forward, depending on what the sound is. As well as the soft palate, it closes and opens when we have to build up air to push through to make what we call plosive sounds, like p, b, d. They're sounds that require you to hold air and then force it out. As well as our larynx. So our diaphragm is pushing the air up, our larynx is opening or closing depending on what the sound is, and helping to produce those sounds. So you can see a lot takes place, very quickly in order for sounds to be produced accurately. All right, so Ms. Barton is going to pass out some papers. We're going to do a little activity together.
Yay, fun to read.
Fun. Pens on your desk there, your tables.
All right.
So at the top of your page, you should see these letters B, P, B, M, T, D, K, and G. And I selected these sounds because these are the sounds that develop first. So between 2 and 3 or 2 and 3.5, we look for some of these sounds to kind of be mastered in children. What I want you to do on your page, it says front, middle, and back. If you can take time to say each one of those sounds like p, p, and write down, what do you think, which articulators are being involved? P, what am I using to make that sound? And go through that list and kind of figure out where you think each one of those sounds are being produced and what articulators are being utilized. Okay? All right, where would you like to take your guess? I'm going to give you P and B.
I put both in front.
Very good. See, you can just make
Oh, sorry, yep.
So P and B, and what's the articulators what they're being used to help make those sounds?
Lips.
The lips. See, and you were nervous.
I know, right? It's been a long time to be in that position.
I know. So P and B are made with the lips. You know, the lips are closed, you release some air, the soft palate drops, and the air explodes through your lips. All right, and it's made in the front, middle, or back? Front. Okay. And these are a list of all the different things that are happening. Like I said, within milliseconds, all these things need to happen to produce that sound. All right. Let's try over here.
So I'm sorry, is the M the middle or the front?
The M is the front too, but I concentrate on B and P only because the air is coming like through the nasal a little bit too as well. So for M, but we wanted to concentrate on P and B because that's more like a tactile sound that you can kind of feel and hear. All right. So our next set would be T and D.
Put T in the front, and I put D in the middle.
Put D in the middle. Mm-hmm. What do you think the tongue is doing when you produce those sounds? How's your tongue?
Going back?
So, say it again.
It's going back, is that what you're talking about?
Or is it elevated or flat?
It's up.
It's up. Mm-hmm.
Duh.
Duh. Yeah, what would you say for duh?
So they're both up.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, they're both produced. Tongue tip is up. Tongue moves behind the front teeth, and the hard palate is activated to produce those sounds. All right. And then the next set, how about we go over here?
Or K and G up in the back.
Put in the back. Very good. That's an honorary speech therapist. When I need help, I'm going to call you this. All right, K and G. The sound is made in the back of the mouth. The diaphragm is helping with our airflow so that we can get those the air pushing through. Tongue comes up a little bit, so it makes that k, what we call velar sounds, or they're like the hard sounds. All right. So when we look at preschoolers and how they're developing speech skills, we have to take into account things that inhibit. It could be things that are congenital, like you're born with them, or it could be factors in the environment. So the number one issue that I tend to see with some of my children that have the articulation difficulties is ear infections. Because at that time when children who suffer from chronic ear infections, that's fluid that's in the ear and the child is not able to hear correctly. It's sort of like when you're in a pool, you're under the water, you can hear people talking above you, but you can't make it out. It's very, muddled. So ear infections, because they tend to happen in their, you have a good week when they have medication or antibiotics and the fluid is draining, and then the next week might be good, and then the following week they have to develop another one. That's just like the nature of ear infections. So children who suffer with them chronically that whole time while they're developing, those speech sounds are not going to be heard as crisp as they should. Also here we have You might hear children being tongue-tied. That little frenulum underneath the tongue that holds the tongue in place, it can be really, really short. And that prevents a child from lifting their tongue up or retracting their tongue. But we now know the tongue is very important in producing those speech sounds. So if the child cannot lateralize or lift up the tongue or push it forward wherever it needs to go, those sounds are going to come out, with errors. We also have the pacifier. Now, I caution these because I know a lot of times parents are very nervous because sucking the thumb or a pacifier is soothing. Very soothing. And I can recall when I was a younger speech therapist and I would tell parents, take it away. You just gotta, cut the cord, do it cold turkey. And then I had kids. And so I realized it may not be as easy as cutting the cord or just taking it away. So I now preface it by saying prolonged use of the pacifier or prolonged use of bottle drinking does impact speech development because it's not allowing those articulators to kind of develop and be stronger and be able to produce, it's more difficult for them to produce the sound correctly.
Okay, so everybody, there are on your table some handouts on when are the speech sounds mastered. So this is just a general guideline. It's not exact, it's not a science. All children develop at different levels, different ages, but it just kind of gives you a ballpark of when these sounds should be emerging in your child. And so I always find them a little confusing though, because it'll say by age 3, but it really means by the end of age 3. So it's really by age, right before they reach 4, they should have that P, M, H, W, and N sound. By the end of their 4th year, so 3 and 4-year-olds, generally what we're dealing with here at this, at this age, B, K, G, D, F, and Y. And then by age 5, they really are not developing new sounds. They really don't need to develop any new sounds. So you'll see over on the other side, all these other sounds, T, the sound, R, L, CH, SH, J, the unvoiced TH and the voiced TH, the S, Z, V, ZH, those are 6, 7, and 8 years old that they have to develop those sounds. And again, by the end of their 8th year, by the end of their 7th year, by the end of their 6th year. So really, these are the only sounds that you should be looking at right now to determine whether or not you have any concerns over your child's development. And again, it's not science. Some children just need a little bit extra time, and we're going to go over some things. If you are seeing some errors in those sounds, those early sounds, of things that you can do to help. So obviously all of these sounds are going to form words, and that's when the words become language, and that's how children learn. So sometimes your children can make these sounds in isolation, but then when they try to put them into words, that's where you're having the trouble understanding them. Because if you go back to these sounds, P could be at the beginning of the word, party, It could be in the middle of the word, happen, or it can be at the end of the word, cap. So sometimes they're able to say the sound in certain positions, but not all positions yet. So the first thing we want to do is kind of make sure they can make the sound, and then we want to kind of encourage it in other forms. Do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. When the evaluation process for speech, when you're looking at a child who's having difficulty producing sound, like Kelly said, it's going to happen. The evaluation will look at word level. Well, first isolation, syllable, then word level, then phrase level, meaning 1 to 2 words, and then finally sentence, and then conversation. So what will tend to see happen, and it's really because they're young, their young age, is that, like Kelly said, they might do it in isolation, they might be able to do it in one part of the word, but sometimes phrases or sentences are difficult because the longer the information, that they have to say. Sometimes the higher the errors you will see.
Okay, and so then that's articulation. Now we're into the language part of it, the developmental milestones for that. So we have 3 to 6 months. You're going to hear that cooing and that gurgling. Oops, sorry. 6 months to 12 months, you'll start to hear the babbling. From 12 to 18 months is a general guideline to start hearing those first words. 18 months to 2 years, at that point they'll start to learn some new words, anywhere from 5 to 40 at that age. From 2 to 3 years, that's when you're going to have that big burst of language, and they're going to know 150 to 300 words, and they'll start to begin to talk in 2 and 3 word sentences. From 3 to 4 years, where a lot of our children here are now, they should have about 1,000 words in their vocabulary, and they should be able to use that vocabulary to ask questions and deliver short sentences. At 4 to 5 years, which more of our kids are here, they should have somewhere around 2,000 words and should be able to speak in 5+ word sentences. And from 5 years on, they'll start identifying the letters, creating longer sentences, and things like that. Anybody have any questions on those developmental milestones? Again, remember that everybody develops at their own pace. These are just some guidelines.
I did want to share a bit that we will be emailing this presentation to everyone just so that you can, go back and review it if you need some information. As well as on the back tables, there are handouts that talk about speech and language development from 3 to 5, 5-year-olds. And on the back are activities that you can do to generate those skills on the front, things you can do at home.
And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those right now. So some different items that you can use, and when we're done here, we're going to send home a little oral motor speech kit with you, a little bag that has a lot of these items in it to help your children to develop those sounds. So basically anything that is going to use those oral muscles, the lips, the tongue, the blowing, the airflow, right? So any of these things, anything you have to blow, like those party favors, whistles, those little toy recorders, things like that. And anything, bubbles, of course. Bubbles helps too with that airflow. There's a lot of air. They have to get that right amount of air to get that bubble out. And then that sucking from the straws are really good. And the thicker the substance they have to suck, the more work their mouth is doing. So you might start, and you talked about a progression of things to go ahead, you want to do that?
Yeah, so I wanted to refer to a couple of slides ago, we had a bottle, like the prolonged use of a bottle inhibits sometimes speech sounds from developing. So typically from infancy, you have the bottle, you go to a sippy cup, and then you go to a cup with a straw. So it's fine. I'm not saying don't ever use any of those things. You just want to make sure you keep progressing through them so that a child doesn't get too used to it, and then it's hard for them to move on to, like, say, a cup with a straw. You want to make sure that their muscles are keeping up with their overall development, because sometimes that inhibits children. When the muscles get too weak, they're not able to produce the sounds adequately. I wanted to say for a mirror too, like when they're brushing their teeth, that's the best time to work on some of these goals, because they're in front of the mirror, they can see their mouths. You can use the toothbrush to kind of be like, oh, let me see, can you lift your tongue up like this? Can you lift your tongue down? Can you lift your tongue side to side? Can you round your lips? Because they have the mirror right there in front of them. So, and that's an activity that you do every day. Every day you brush your teeth, so you can sneak in like a little bit of work every day during that time.
So with those items, here's some ideas that you can use. So with a straw and a pom-pom, you can do a ton of different things. You can put some tape on the floor, blow across the line, you can build some block towers and have them try to blow the pom-pom through. You can, have races across the table and see who gets it off the end of the table first. So anything that, is causing them to blow through a straw, those are really good mouth exercises. And we talked about the shakes. So you might move from water or juice to something a little bit thicker before you're gonna move to those smoothies and milkshakes and things like that.
So, before McDonald's switched to the paper straws, the plastic straws used to be like the best because it was the easiest to drink through. And you want to start with like thin liquids because you don't want them to get disturbed. Like, so you want water, juice, anything that's really thin that they can drink through. Generally what happens once we're done with that easy straw, you want to start getting more difficult. Working those muscles. So back on the previous slide where we had the crazy straw, where you have to kind of suck it all the way through, or making the liquid that they're drinking a little bit thicker, like a smoothie or a milkshake, because that really works these muscles here and works the muscles that you can utilize for speech. Sometimes in therapy, I would have some of my students use a coffee stirrer. Those ones that have stronger muscles, use a coffee stirrer to like maybe sip applesauce, or maybe a little bit of watered down pudding, because that really works your muscle and it's fun. It coincides with, oh, I really want this chocolate pudding, or I really want this applesauce. So the straws can help you strengthen those muscles if a child's experiencing weaknesses.
And we talked about the mirror before too, so this is just like a fun way to do those mirror exercises, having them look in the mirror, and one of these like monkey see, monkey do cards, and they just have to imitate them, and for them that's fun. They're making faces in a mirror. So any ways that we can try to make it fun for them. Yeah. And we also have our speech, our books that emphasize certain sounds. So if you notice a certain sound that your child is having difficulty with, you can, you have a bibliography, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I have a bibliography already put together, and it targets all speech sounds. So when this presentation is emailed to you, that will be attached to it, so that you can look up books, in the library, or you might have some of the books in your household. I will tell you this, Dr. Seuss books are wonderful for practicing speech, because you get a lot of repetition and you get a lot of like different sounds, like he'll play on words, wishy-washy. You get a chance to really practice those sounds over and over during a fun activity.
Right. It makes it fun. Saying nonsense words is fun. Making up as many nonsense words with that sound. That's really fun for kids. So books with alliteration that are using that same sound over and over again. So those are some things that you can do at home. Some other things that you can do, obviously you want to be a good model. As we talked about, try to stop or reserve that pacifier and bottle use, to limited times, maybe pacifier only at night, bottle maybe not at night, have them not going to sleep with the bottle in their mouth. You want to place an emphasis on the misarticulated words. You don't necessarily want to make the child say the word again, but say your child says tar for car, you're just going to repeat it. And you're going to say, oh yeah, I see the car, and you're going to kind of emphasize that sound. We tell you, please don't pretend to understand your child. That can become very frustrating for them. Ask them to show you what they're talking about. Use siblings to interpret for them, because as we know, kids at that age can learn languages very quickly, and they learn their siblings' language. So they're usually better at interpreting than we are. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that was fun. I was just going to say, if you have a child that, because it's hard to give up the pacifier because it's a soother, and you don't want to just like remove it and now they have nothing to kind of soothe themselves or have themselves. A little tip that, right? I have one person objecting right there. To help with that is the joy of the pacifier is that it deflates and increases, inflates, deflates and inflates. what I tend to do with some of my little ones that I work with that are having a hard time separating from the pacifier, if you clip the very tip of the pacifier and it makes a hole, it prevents it from deflating and inflating again. And when the child uses it, they'll say, like they'll suck it up, like, what is wrong? They'll take it out, they'll look at it, and then they'll put it in, but it won't serve its purpose anymore. Like they'll think, oh, this doesn't work, I don't want this, and it's a little bit easier to separate yourself from. So I just wanted to share a little tip from working with some of my children that seem to work and helps the household, everyone sleep at night. We're going to switch and talk a little bit about disfluent speech, or what's also known as stuttering. So when we look at stuttering for communication disorder, we know that 100% of the time, no one is fluent. We all have disfluencies. We'll see fillers like and you know, until we can kind of retrieve those words. So no one is going to be 100% fluent at any given time. But what we know about stuttering is that they don't seem to know the cause of it. Like, where is it coming from? Why is it that children and adults, suffer from it? We do know that it runs in families, so sometimes it'll be like an uncle, a dad, a grandfather who stuttered as well. It's more prevalent in males. We see it in boys more so than in girls. And it usually comes about for our preschoolers when there's a burst of language. So that's what we call typical. Like it's typical disfluency when they have all these words and they want to express them, but they can't quite get them out. You might see a child being disfluent at this age. But what happens is 6 months down the road, you don't see it anymore. That's when like that's the typical phase. It's when you see it for longer than 6 months and you see it and not just the beginning of the word, you see it at the beginning of the sentence, you see it in the middle, you see it at the end. You might have secondary characteristics where children blink their eyes when they're trying to say it, or they might rock their body as they're trying to get the words out. That's when you want to take more notice to it and kind of document.
Also, I think like anxiety.
Yes.
You see your child anxious in other situations. That may be something to look into.
Right. And with typical and atypical disfluency, it appears to come out of nowhere. So like maybe January, February, you weren't dealing with this. But then all of a sudden in March, boom, it shows up and you're like, when did you start doing this? You start paying attention to it. Just know that sometimes it can be typical. You just want to keep your eye on it to make sure it's not progressing and lasting longer. Some of the tips that we encourage when a child is showing disfluencies is to avoid the negative verbal attention. So like it's our tendency to say, okay, stop, just stop and start all over again. Or we might say, slow down, stop talking, take a deep breath, and then talk again. Sometimes with children who are stuttering, that causes more anxiety. So it's cyclical. They start talking, we say stop, slow down, relax, and it causes them to tense up even more. And then you get more of disfluent speech. So the best thing to do in that scenario, if you have a child who is stuttering, is just to say, I'm going to listen to all you have to say. Because sometimes, kids, they want to be the first to tell you what's going on. They want to be the first to share news with you. So just let them know, I'm going to stand here and listen to what you have to say. You don't have to feel pressured to push it out for me. And as well as modeling slow and easy speech rate. I never forget, I was working with a parent and she came in and she sat down and I said, well, why do you think, your child is starting to stutter now? But I tell you, I was like, can you slow down just after she finished telling me? Because she was like, well, I don't know what happened, and this just happened, and this just occurred, and I really don't understand. And I'm like, whoa, like her rate of speech was so fast that, the child was basically just trying to keep up with her. So being the model and using that slow and easy speech helps children who are disfluent.
Okay. So when we talk about communication, we can break it up into 3 different areas, or 4 different areas actually. We're going to start with pre-verbal communication. So when children are little, you'll start to see them begin to use these gestures. And if you look at all those pictures, you can see that children can communicate using gestures. I bet you can look at all of those pictures and know what those children are trying to tell you. So those are very typical in young toddlers to see those gestures. It's when children start relying on those gestures as they turn 3 and 4. That's when you might want to start to have some concerns. It's obviously the first step in learning to communicate. And we, as the parents and the caregivers, we provide meanings to these gestures. So the children learn that we understand it, that we're giving it meaning by pointing. We're understanding you want cookies right now, you want crackers. By raising their hands up, oh, you want me to pick you up. And some children just don't feel the need to learn the language, to say those things, because they're getting their needs met without having to say those things. So newborn, just like newborn and infants' cries have different meanings. We know, just a talkative sound. We know a hungry cry from a I'm hurt and I'm in pain cry. The gestures will begin to take on those different meanings for you too. And also facial expressions and body language also can help the listener to discern what the child is trying to tell them. So again, these are all common. You're going to see all these. You're going to see your toddlers use them. You might still see your 3-year-olds relying on them. We just encourage you to encourage them to start using the language. So after the pre-verbal, we start to develop receptive language. So receptive language is your children's ability to understand and process what you are saying to them. It's their hearing of the words and being able to put meaning to those words. So understanding language provided in a variety of ways. So it could be a symbol. Do they understand what a stop sign means? Or, we're doing this. It could be spoken words, or it could even be gestures, like that stop sign. So receptively, are they understanding all those different ways that you're communicating with them? It moves into following directions. Can they follow a direction? Can they follow a multi-stepped direction? So at this age, those are the kind of things we're looking at when it comes to language. Receptively, are they understanding and able to follow?
I was going to say, so a good receptive language tip to see if your child is able to follow is to not use gestures. Because a lot of times, I tend to talk with my hands all the time. So we're giving clues when we talk to our hands. I want you to go get your shoes. I want you to go upstairs and get the book. So a good indicator is to see how your child responds with no gestures. You're just going to say, bring down your purple coat. Or, go put the box on the table and see if they're able to successfully do it without you giving them any kind of indicator as to what they should do.
So after receptive language is expressive language. So that is their ability to let you know what they need, what they want, what they're thinking expressively. So they're going to be using vocalizations in this expressive language. So, you have children here who are using gestures still to express language. So you can probably look at those pictures and know what that child is saying. What's he telling you? What is he telling her? Yeah.
Get away, restroom.
What about this one?
Excited.
Yeah, I'm so happy. And what do you think this guy's doing?
It's not your turn yet.
Maybe.
It could be a lot of interpretations,
Yeah,
right?
maybe push me, give me a push.
Yeah,
But so again, what we want to do is to encourage them to use those words instead of those gestures. Just to see, go back to those milestones. So do they have a vocabulary of 350 to 1,000 words at this point? Are you hearing those different words all the time? Are they able to put them together into sentences?
this area of language is what we call pragmatic language, or it's like social language. And this is, are children able to be appropriate with their language in social settings? So whenever I get to this one, I always chuckle because, sometimes I'm sure you hear a lot of stuff about us at school. And they want to share things about what happens at home as well. So we help to shape them and help them to learn, like, okay, so you may not want to talk about this at school, but here's something we can discuss. So it's just being appropriate with our language use in social settings. That means like, oh, when I go up and I say hi, it's a social greeting, you may say hi back, or you may say bye if someone says have a good day, those types of things, as well as being able to maintain a conversation. Like you might say, at school we'll say, oh, do you want trick-or-treating? And you want that little exchange. It may be short, but it's just a little exchange to let them know, to let us know they're able to carry on with the conversation successfully.
And at this age, like our assessments show us that if they can go back and forth with you 3 times, that's pretty typical for this age. We want to be able to increase that, but if they're at least having a 3 or 4 back and forth on one topic with you is pretty typical.
What age?
At 3 to 4, yeah. Is that it?
Yep. So these are some techniques that are utilized in speech and language therapy that you can also incorporate at home. The first one would be the expansion technique. So that's for some children who come and they'll say, him hurt. Like, the pronoun use may not be appropriate. But for you as parents and even for us here at school, we kind of switch it around and say, he is hurt. He is hurt. Yes, I'm glad you noticed that, or I'm glad you told me that, just so that they hear the correct production and the expected phrase. And it's not ending on the incorrect production. They're hearing the correct. The extension might be they're at home and they say, red card, like they're showing they want you to see that they're holding the red card. You can extend it by saying, oh, you found your new red card, or you found your brother's red card. You just want to make that utterance a little bit longer. You want to start increasing so that they're up to like 4 to 5 words when they're conversing with you. And scaffolding, you want to make sure that the child can now start to expand based on what you're talking about. So maybe at home, the child say, oh, Mom, you made popcorn. And you might say, yeah, I made popcorn for the movie we're having tonight. You just want to scaffold that language and have them hear it. So, and then you'll see the more you're practicing it, they'll just automatically do it because that's what they're used to hearing. It helps them to build that vocabulary. It helps them to increase those words that they're using, so that, as they progress through school, when they develop sentences, they'll be stronger sentences and things like that.
Sorry.
I wanted to talk to you about how those words first come about. So when children are very young, those first words that they're going to utilize the most are nouns. Mommy, daddy, brother, sister's name, balloon, car, their toys that they talk about. Those are going to be their first labels. But then you want to expand upon that, and it's a little bit like what you're saying with expansion and scaffolding. So you want to include like some describing words. Oh, which pair of shoes are you going to wear? Are you going to wear the new shoes or, the old shoes? Giving them those descriptive labels as well so they can start utilizing them.
Yes, that's a red balloon.
Right. And also they love funny, icky words like yuck and ooh. So those are keywords to help them to start to expand. The little guys, you'll always hear this, like even when there's not a problem, they'll just be like, uh-oh, because they know that that exchange, like they look to you like, uh-oh. You're like, what? There's nothing, uh-oh, there's nothing going on. But they just like to be repetitive with those phrases. Location words. You want the book that's on top of the shelf. You know, you put the paper in the drawer and close it. Like you just want to keep extending so that they start to use more and more action words. Any books, excuse me, that have those action words too are great. You know, what they call it, onomatopoeia, where it makes those noises like whoosh, whoa. You know, they are gravitating to those kinds of books as well. And words that show how something was done. You know, oh, you walked down the stairs slowly, you kept safe. Or you told me about that story beautifully. You know, you want to start increasing their vocabulary so that when they hear those words, they'll make a connection to when they're in school.
So you got all your different parts of speech there. They start with the nouns, you've got your adjectives as your describing words, you've got your verbs as your action words, your adverbs as, you know, the how words, you've got your different, like you said, the onomatopoeia, and your location words are going to be those prepositional phrases. So you're just really building that whole language, grammar, you know, how to syntax, how to put words together.
So, you know, you say now what? If you sat through this presentation and you're still a little bit concerned about what to do if you suspect your child has a speech and language delay, definitely number one, you want to talk to your pediatrician. You know, you just want to run it by them. And if your child is 3 and under, there's an agency, early childhood intervention, that will come out to your home or go out to their daycare, wherever they are during the day, and provide testing. If they qualify, they can have services, you know, before they turn 3. If your child is over 3 and you suspect there's an issue, you consult your school. So it'll probably be Kelly and myself, who your teachers will reach out to, or the teachers will let us know that you have a concern. And one of us will come out, we'll kind of do an observation. There's a screening involved as well. And, you know, we share those results with you. Because like I said, sometimes, you know, some parents are like, is it typical? My 3-year-old can't say an S, you know? So we'll go out, we'll see how it impacts their ability to communicate, and, you know, go over the results with you as well. If we see that, yes, your child is having difficulty, and this is a sound that, you know, possibly they should have mastered, or a few sounds that they should have mastered that they haven't, there's a possibility that they may go to child study team. And they will do a full evaluation and recommend services if warranted. Are there any questions or?
Anything that we didn't touch on that you came here hoping to
Right.
learn about?
Singing,
Say it again.
does singing do anything for speech or?
Singing actually does a lot
Mention it.
for stuttering.
Uh-huh.
Most stutterers, when they're singing, they do not stutter.
It calms them down, or is it just using the muscles
That's what I
for
think
like
it
4
is.
minutes straight,
Yeah.
trying to hit up and down? And,
Yeah, I think it's relaxing.
uh-huh.
It's not so much, usually when you sing in a group,
Right.
you know, and the eyes are not all on you, so it just seems to decrease the disfluency.
And
A
I
lot
think
of
you're
it's from
just
anxiety.
trying
Nervousness.
you're not necessarily trying to get a point across when you're
Right,
singing.
right.
Like you're not trying to have somebody listen to something you're trying to tell them, so it's repetitive, so it's easier. So, but singing, yeah, absolutely, because we use a lot of songs that have alliteration to
Oh,
work
yes.
on those sounds. Because again, it's more fun. It's
It
more
is.
fun than practicing saying ta 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 ta.
Right.
You know, if you can put it in a song, anything you do that can make it more fun for kids is
Absolutely.
gonna increase their ability to practice it and you know, improve.
Right, right. Sort of like putting vegetables in desserts.
I did have a question. So with the straws, Nicholas drinks out of just like a regular cup. He doesn't use like a fish. Yeah, he doesn't use a straw. Should I get him a cup of the straw in order to have him practice the
Yep.
technique?
Yeah, absolutely. In those bags, there will be a couple of crazy straws.
Okay.
You know, so you can have him try that. I will tell you this, so if you have a straw in there, you want to make sure that they're using the tip of the straw and they're not biting down and then drinking. They should be able to put around their lips on the straw
Okay.
and drink. So you just want to be cognizant of that because that's cheating. You can bite the straw and then still sip it up. You're not working the muscles as well. But yes, if he drinks out of the straw, fine. Make it fun. Just make a smoothie or a milkshake together, and then have them utilize it that way.
And like you're saying, if he can do those, like thinner liquids,
Mm-hmm.
like applesauce is a great one to like, try to,
Right.
and it can be fun, like it's,
Mhm.
who gets to suck up applesauce with a straw, you know?
Right.
So it really helps to build those muscles. Now, we're not saying he always should have a straw, but, just to help build that muscle.
Right.
Anything else? Yeah.
My kids are like, kind of like chameleons when they hang out with people. It doesn't have to be for a long time. They can start speaking like them and they use their words and they use their patterns or, whatever.
Yeah.
What does that mean anything, or is that just them talking together?
Kids are just so versatile
They
at that
are.
age to learn, that's why children can learn languages so much more easily.
When they're
than we
younger.
can. So they
Mhm.
pick up on, and that's why we're saying, be a good model, because they're picking up on your intonations, on the way you say words, and if they're spending time with other people, they're picking up on theirs too. So, yeah, so we have children who speak 2 languages at home,
Yes.
or they speak a different language at home and a language here, and that, sometimes we do see issues with that
Mhm.
because maybe sounds are produced in a different way in a different language and things
Mhm.
like that. So yeah, they are definitely picking up what they're hearing, and that's very typical.
Yes. Like their neural pathways have just begun, where like in my old skull, it's hard to like switch over and do something new, whereas kids are like, they can zigzag back and forth because their brains are so flexible and pliable at this age. So, now's the time. Were you talking about someone who spoke another language they were able to imitate, or are you just saying in general?
No, they copy they speak one way and then they hang out with somebody for like a week or so,
Yeah.
and then it's like they're that person now, and I have to look sometimes. It's a long kid.
Right, yeah. It's easy to do those
Remember, their
things.
brains aren't fully developed
Yeah.
until they're 21, so
I was
like
about to
they
say,
are.
my 12-year-old, that sounds, what you
Yeah.
described,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that
Mhm.
happens a
Mhm.
lot.
Their brains can change and mold and meld to different things
Absolutely.
all the way up until they're 21, so.
Mhm.
I mean, it's most, you've heard everything I've learned, I learned in kindergarten or before kindergarten. That's the age that there is the biggest growth, the most learning going on from 0 to 5.
Mhm.
So that's why we want to try to focus on these things now when we have 3 and 4-year-olds, before it, becomes a little bit harder to correct.
All right, if there are no more questions, I want to thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate it, and please take a motor kit home with you. There's plenty of handouts.
Our cards are back there.
Yes.
If you need to reach out to one of us at any time, please feel free to do that. Reach out to your teacher. She can put you in contact with us. And we'll kind of, if you feel you need to go through that child study process, we can kind of walk you through that and
Right.
determine, help you determine if that's the next step for you.